Our project examines how three different works of art share the same element of contrast. This element can be found in the painting Violent Building by Tony Bevon, the sculpture First Disappointment by Erastus Dow Palmer, and the classical piece Canon in D major by Johann Pachelbel. While each piece of art is expressed in different ways, they all have similar techniques. We are here to show you that no matter what form of art, nor what year it was created, artists use contrasting elements to help accent their masterpieces.
The first piece we chose was a particular painting by Tony Bevon, entitled Violent Building. Tony Bevon has focused on the human-like figure for the majority of his career, but in the previous decade or so, he has focused his attention on architecture, with a particular emphasis on buildings and their structural elements. They make up the majority of his monochromatic pieces. They also follow certain patterns, usually. This particular piece is very line-oriented, with varying levels of thickness to these lines. The lines range from hairline thick to thick and decisive. They draw you ever closer into it with its varying thickness. The lines work together to create direction in a diagonal pattern that draws the viewer deeper into the center of the piece. With a combination of horizontal and with few vertical lines, it almost feels as if you're walking down a tunnel, trying to get somewhere. After looking at the piece long enough, there are specific lines that choose to reveal themselves, that seem to be the framework, if you will. Mr. Bevon's interests have lied within structures over the last decade, and you can definitely find a complicated yet simple structure within the piece. At the bottom of this piece, we can see a particularly large blocking pattern that brings to mind common shapes such as a triangle and rectangles. But beyond these basic shapes, they provide depth for the piece and allow it to truly travel. We can travel into the piece with the aid of this larger, darker space at the bottom of the painting. Mr. Bevon's piece finds a happy medium between abstraction and figuration, which truly allows it to find itself. With the use of repetitive shapes and lines, we are able to build the structure through our imagination, and this is truly marvelous.
Now we're going to look at a sculpture made by Erastus Dow Palmer. He was the artist of the sculpture Disappointed Peasant. He was born in Pompeii, New York, and grew up learning carpentry. In 1846, he decided to pursue his own career in sculpting. Palmer uses American concerns and naturalistic themes for his sculptures. He was one of the first artists to use the neoclassical style. His sculpture Disappointed Peasant was of his own daughter. She had been watching a bird's nest develop and hatch and was devastated when she found the nest empty one day. Palmer uses marble as his template and creates a full round sculpture, giving us the three-dimensional effect. He makes his daughter's face look soft and sad by smoothing out all the lines. Her body is proportional all around, and each limb and feature of her is symmetrical. The main focal point is her sad facial expression. Palmer wants us to feel the grief of his daughter through his sculpture. He uses subtraction to carve away the unnecessary marble to form a clean-cut statue. By creating a smooth face for the focal point, he uses a contrasting style for her dress, which has sharper edges. This contrast helps Palmer give off an innocent glow to his daughter's face. This adds to the work of his focal point in his attempt to show her sadness. You can tell that Palmer uses a naturalistic style because he uses a classic white marble for his template and takes an ancient Greece approach. Palmer works really hard to give us a realistic image of his grieving daughter to help us understand what she was going through.
Johann Pachelbel wrote one of his most famous pieces, Canon in D major, in the 1680s. Pachelbel wrote hundreds of different pieces and is unfairly seen as a one-work composer due to the immense popularity of Canon in D major. Johann Pachelbel is an important figure in the Baroque period because he is very innovative with his organ music. Through his music, he united Catholic Gregorian chant elements with North German organ style. This unification is reflected in the Protestant chorale. These new techniques earned him great prestige as he brought German organ tradition to its peak and became identified as an organ composer. Pachelbel became widely known and was asked to teach others his ways. His most notable students are the Bach brothers. Although his chamber music represents a small part of Pachelbel's achievements as a composer, Canon in D major is a universally recognized cultural icon. In this piece, Pachelbel maintains a texture of homophony as there remains a constant melody line with repetitious background accompaniment. The tempo of this piece begins rather slowly and then picks up as the instruments reach the climax of the piece. The instruments crescendo and decrescendo with the tempo. When the piece begins, the tempo is slow and the instruments are playing pianissimo. However, as the tempo picks up, the instruments crescendo into a forte and then decrescendo into a mezzo piano. They never return back to their original pianissimo. Throughout the piece, the audience experiences a stark contrast between the melody line and the background accompaniment. The melody line maintains a beautiful long legato notes, while the background accompaniment maintains its staccato line throughout the entire piece. I believe that one of the reasons why this piece has remained popular for over 300 years is its simplicity and repetition. This makes the piece easy to listen to and is very calming to the listener. Each of these three works of art share the same theme of contrast. In the painting Violent Building by Tony Bevan, Bevan displays the element of contrast through the use of different variations of line thickness. Although these lines are straight, they create a contrasting illusion of an arched tunnel. Bevan also uses contrasting tones, light and dark, to emphasize the different line variations. Herodotus Palmer uses the theme of contrast in his sculpture, First Disappointment, through the use of both sharp and smooth edges and lines. He creates a really smooth face for his daughter and contrasts it with the sharper edges of her dress. This helps create an innocent and sad face. He uses this contrast to make her face a focal point, which helps draw you in and understand his sculpture. Finally, Canon in D major by Johann Pachelbel displays the element of contrast through the use of homophony. He contrasts the legato melody line with the staccato notes of the background harmonic accompaniment. The accompaniment repeats itself throughout the entire piece. Contrastingly, the melody line takes on different tempos to showcase the timbre of the organ. No matter what form of art nor what year it was created, artists use contrasting elements to accent their masterpiece.